Oh man, I wonder if you guys are as tired at looking at this page as I am. Sure hope we finish it soon. Let's get started with our first proper noun here, Pokémon. Oh my gosh, the word Pokémon in a Pokémon manga. I wonder what this could mean. Again though, cannot stress this enough. Back when this was brand new, we weren't supposed to know what a Pokémon was yet. But now we do. I guess for like the 1% of you out there who doesn't know, this is short for pockets, monsters, but because of the sounds, it comes out looking like this, okay? Glad we're all on the same page. Let's go ahead and look at the next particle, ol. Now, despite the fact that this is written with the W family, as in if you were to type this out on a keyboard, it would be W-ol, and it's often considered part of the W family. When you pronounce it out loud, it's pronounced very similarly to just the character ol, without the W sound. To be completely honest with you, this is more of just like a standard Tokyo accent kind of thing. It's not like this was intended to be pronounced this way. At some point in history, this was pronounced wo with the W sound, but at some point the W sound fell off when using it as a particle. Another fun fact about this character is it does not appear in any modern Japanese word. So every time you see it, it is always, without exception, being used as a particle. It's not being used as anything else. I think it's possible that maybe some people, when they go to Japan and make up a Japanese name for themselves, try to use the O sound in their name. It never works out. Just know that it's only the particle. And it's what we call, very conveniently, the object particle. Get it? Because it's O and it's the object. Gosh, I'm good. So getting our three boys out here, Nomu, Taberu, and Suru. Let's go ahead and use this brand new particle with them because this is going to be a very, very crucial particle to your everyday usage. The O particle marks what the verb is happening to within a sentence. Now, up to this point, we've already learned the passive form, so you already know how to make a basic sentence saying that, for example, the cake was eaten, the coffee was drank, so on and so forth. But more naturally speaking, it's usually going to be a person or an animal or something that is the subject of the sentence, and then we're going to need a different particle for the coffee or the cake in those cases. And that's where the O particle comes in. So, kohi o nomu would mean drink coffee. In English, we normally put the object, aka the thing that the verb is happening to, directly after the verb in English. So when you're translating these over, that's usually how it works out. Drink coffee. Again, the O particle is very important here because it tells the listener that coffee is what the verb of the sentence is going to happen to. Keiki o taberu. The cake is the thing being eaten, so cake gets the O particle since it's the object. Geimu o suru. Geimu is video games. Suru is to do. Again, I've explained this before, but the Japanese don't use the word play when they're talking about playing sports or playing video games or playing board games. They use the word do. Geimu o suru would translate to doing games literally, but it more naturally translates to playing games since that's how we say it in English. If all these particles are getting you down, they're just, gosh darn it, there's so many particles to remember. How am I ever going to remember these all? I've got a little trick for you that I'm going to show you now. Most Japanese teachers come up with some visualization for how the particle system works in Japanese. Me personally, I use the star. You would think that, being a Kiradali simp as I am, I would use Kiradali's system, but I actually don't like the way Kiradali teaches the particle system. The way she teaches it is it's train cars, and you've got like the main cars that actually push the sentence forward, and then each other car behind it gives some kind of detail and is represented by a particle. But I think something like this is a little bit easier to understand, and I'm going to explain it here. So when you are working with a Japanese sentence, what you basically want to look at it as is this. Each and every one of the words marked with a particle is kind of like a point on this star here. Doesn't really matter what order they go in as you'll see in just a moment. But all of these words marked with particles are going to tell us something about how the verb of the sentence is being done. This verb, I'm going to go ahead and translate for you now, is the word for bought. Again, the word buy isn't really on our vocabulary list, so you don't have to worry about memorizing it. But just know that the word in the middle here means bought. Individually speaking, each one of these words here tells us something about the way in which something is bought. So, for example, this de particle here tells us where something was bought. So just the sentence mise de kata would tell us that something is bought at the store. The ga particle tells us who did the buying, and in this case it was he. So just the sentence kare ga katta would tell us he bought whatever it is we're talking about. The o particle tells us what is being purchased. So, okashi o katta would be bought snacks. We can say this sentence using any combination of details that we want to, as long as we say the parts on the points of the star first, and then say what's in the middle of the star last. So, for example, if I wanted to say, he bought it at the store, kare ga mise de katta. If I wanted to say, bought snacks at the store, mise de okashi o katta. If I wanted to say he bought snacks, kare ga okashi o katta. You see, it's a very, very simple system. It's very elegant. It's one of the reasons I love the Japanese language so much. But this is basically the way that you can look at the particle system going forward if it's been a little bit too much for you to handle. The full sentence, of course, would be something like mise de kare ga okashi o katta, and this would be he bought snacks at the store, like the full thing, telling us all of the details that we have here. Now, the real fun thing about my system here is you can also use it to sort of simplify translating from English into Japanese once that starts to become something you're interested in. So to keep things thematic, I went ahead and make a little sentence here about catching a Pokemon. So how would we use the star to translate this sentence? Well, first things first, the verb and anything that signifies the tense or whatever, if there was the word like not or won't or whatever, that would come with it. This goes right in the middle of the star. Because again, whatever the verb of the sentence is, that's going to be our end point. Everything else is just telling us details about how the catching is being done. Next up, we have to take each noun that we have here and put it on a point of the star. So Pikachu is going to be over here. Viridian Forest is going to be over here. Now, here's my favorite part of the translation process. You see all of this extra stuff here. You see the little exclamation point, and you see the words a and in. All of these can just disappear. We really, really don't need them. Now, the natural flow will be, we'll say each of these words along with the particle that sort of describes what it is we're using that word for. And then once we're done giving all the details, we'll finish on the word caught. So let's go ahead and translate all of this here. Pikachu is, of course, a Japanese word, so we don't need to do anything to translate it over. But what particle would it get? What does Pikachu have to do with catching something? Pikachu isn't the one doing the catching, so it's not the subject. Pikachu isn't the place where something is being caught, so it's not the place. Pikachu's not a time. Pikachu's not a destination. I think the thing that matches the best here is probably going to be the object, because Pikachu is the thing being caught. Now, another important thing I have to point out here is an object does not mean a non-living thing like it does in English. So in English, we use the word object to just talk about tables and computers and stuff, right? Those are objects. In Japanese, an object is, strictly speaking, what the verb of the sentence is happening to, meaning that if the verb is something that can be done to a living thing, so for example, you can say something like, I saw my friend at school, then your friend would be the object in that case because the seeing is happening to the friend. Now in this case here, Pikachu is going to be our O particle. Okay, what do I have to do with the catching process. Again, I'm not the place where something's being caught. I'm not a time. I'm not a destination. I'm not an end point or a start point. Lots of things to choose from, but since I'm the one who did the catching, think I'm going to be the ga of our sentence because I'm the one doing the verb. Last up, we have Viridian Forest, and I'll cut you guys a break here in case you happen to not be like a fan of the old Pokemon games or whatever. Viridian Forest is in fact a place where it is possible to catch a Pikachu in some versions. So, we haven't learned this particle yet. It's okay. Don't worry about memorizing it yet. We will see it soon. The de particle marks where an action occurs. Really, the only other step we have here, now that we have all of the points of our star with their correct particle, would be to translate all the words over. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. Since I'm feeling a little bit lazy, I'm not going to worry too much about the actual, proper nouns. Pikachu and Viridian Forest are just going to stay the same. I'm sure there's a more Japanese way to pronounce them, but I'm okay with where they're at right now. So if I wanted to make the sentence, I caught a Pikachu, watashi ga Pikachu wo tsukamaeta, that would be the full sentence. If I wanted to say, the Pikachu was caught in Viridian Forest de Pikachu wo tsukamaeta, that would be it. And if I just wanted to make the sentence without the Pikachu and just say, I caught it in Viridian Forest, we could be talking about any Pokemon at that point. Watashi ga Viridian Forest de tsukamaeta. I kind of gave it the Japanese twinge there. I wasn't supposed to do that, but that's okay. And then if I wanted to make the full sentence, I caught a Pikachu in Viridian Forest de watashi ga Pikachu wo tsukamaeta. Anyways, that's really all I wanted to go over here. I know that the particle system throws a lot of foreigners off, so don't let it get you down. This is something that will become very, very simple as you start to use the language more, but hopefully this helps you out a little bit. Okay, we may have already learned the word tsukamaeru, to catch, but there's a couple of endings here that we now have to talk about. The first one, of course, being the tai form. Now, you may have been thrown off a little bit, because when you look here on the end of tsukamaeru, you see tsukamaeta, and you might be thinking to yourself, but wait a second, we've already learned the ta form, senpai. I don't want to go over it again. Well, I've got good news and bad news for you. The good news is we don't have to talk about the ta form again. The bad news is this is not ta form, and this is something that we'll have to get into a little bit later, but for right now, I just want to teach you what it is, and then I'll teach you how to identify it. So, the tai form. Tai form is what we call the want form in Japanese. What it basically signifies is that we want to do the verb of the sentence. Okay, you already know we got to get these guys out here. So, in order to attach the ending tai, here's how it works. If you are using a group 1 verb, then you shift into its e family, or the I ending character if you want to be all romaji about it. So mu becomes mi. Then you just attach tai. So the word nomitai makes the word go from drink to want to drink. Group 2, hope I don't have to explain this one too much to you, right? At this point, you should know. Drop the ru, add the ending. Tabe tai would be want to eat. Suru is going to do its usual thing here. Again, the entire word's going to get a makeover. Suru is going to become the sound shi. Then we're going to add the ending. Suru becomes shitai. So it goes from being to do, want to do. Now, in order for this next part to make sense, we have to talk about a small quirk when it comes to tai form. There is already a type of word in Japanese that always ends in this e character, and that is adjectives. This is the adjective for expensive, for example. Because of this, this word here now actually becomes a description. It's kind of like saying that something makes me want it, right? So, for example, if I were to attach coffee here, kohi, now that we've just learned the o particle, your first assumption is going to be that we're going to say kohi o nomitai. Kohi o nomitai. And this would be want to drink. However, that's not really always the case because nomitai is now in a sort of adjective state. We can actually use the ga particle here. Kohi ga nomitai. We're basically describing the coffee as making me want it, making me want to drink it. Drinking is what I want to do with the coffee. I know this is a very strange concept, and it's not something that you have to wrap your head around immediately, but just know that now that these words end like adjectives, they can be used like adjectives to describe things in a way that we would describe an adjective. So, for example, if we're chilling at Starbucks and the coffee is expensive, then I'm going to go ahead and cheat here a little bit. Do as I say, not as I do, kids. Kohi ga takai is how we would describe the coffee as expensive. But if we want to talk about wanting to drink the coffee, we can use the word nomitai the same way we use the word takai to describe a characteristic of the coffee. In this sentence, we're describing the coffee as expensive. In this sentence, we're describing the coffee as making me want to drink it. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and let you in on a little secret here. This is not a hard and fast rule. If this is too confusing for you, kohi o nomitai also works just fine. Honestly, I see them kind of interchangeable. I've seen both of these patterns used here. Kohi o nomitai, kohi ga nomitai. I know there's probably like a rule or a system to it, but I'm going to be honest with you. In all my years of teaching and translating, I've never come across a specific instance where I'm like, oh, I need to translate that differently because it's a ga instead of an o. It really hasn't happened. Again, I'm sure somebody who is like super duper into the language is, they're more than welcome to come and correct me on this and explain to me exactly what the nuances of ga versus o here are. Just know that you're going to see it in both of these forms, so you need to understand that, yes, you are going to see ga here in some cases instead of o, and in fact, you're going to see it that way more often than the o. Okay? Sushi ga tabetai. I want to eat sushi, or sushi is wantable to eat. Please don't make this sentence around me because I will call you gross, but I digress. Gemu ga shitai. I want to play video games. Games make me want to play them. That is more true now than ever. I am playing so many games after I record this. So now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the ending kereba. Now this might throw you off a little bit. Where exactly do I see kereba? Am I losing my edge? Well, let me go ahead and explain kereba first, and then I'll explain why I know it's here. Kereba is basically the word if, but it needs to be used with words that end in the e sound. So it can be used with the want form, as well as being used with adjectives. Okay, so we've got our all-stars back out here. Let's go ahead and take a look. Nomitai means want to drink, right? But if I wanted to say nomita kereba, it would be if want to drink. Now, in English, this doesn't make much sense without actually including a subject. So saying something like, if I want to drink something, or if you want to drink something, then something, right? So I'm going to go ahead and include the word you here, even though it doesn't technically need to be there, okay? This is one of the beauties of Japanese. You don't actually need to specify who you're talking about because normally context will tell you who it is, and Japanese aren't big on using pronouns. Tabetai, same thing. Tabeta kereba. If you want to eat... ... Of course, if we wanted to, we could include more details, saying something like, if you want to eat ramen, I know a great place. Or if you want to eat sushi, we can make some at home, or whatever it is. Shitai, second verse, same as the first. Shita kereba. If you want to do it... Of course, there's going to be more here, right? So shitakereba, like if you want to play games, do your homework first. Don't worry. I'm not your dad. I'm your senpai. I'm not going to tell you to do your homework. But that is basically how it would be used. Of course, I've got my adjective here. Takai, again, expensive. Takakereba. So if it's expensive, I won't buy it. You know, something along those lines. Basically, setting the condition that if it's expensive, something, something, something. Okay, it's time to start letting some secrets go. Where do I see kereba? Well, it's right here in this keria. Once again, these are a bunch of kids. Okay, not only are they kids, they're kids from a small village out in the south, okay, out in the Alabama Kanto of whatever whatever region they're supposed to be in, right? The Kanto region is like a super small place in Pokemon, and this is like the smaller version of that place. It's just a small place to the south, right? So keep in mind, these little kids, they speak with kind of a southern, out in the boonies accent. So instead of saying kereba, they're saying keria. There is no meaningful difference between keria and kereba. Again, it is just a pronunciation thing. They are exactly the same. If these were more sophisticated kids, maybe they came from the city, they would probably say kereba, or if they were a little bit older, they might say kereba instead of keria. Both of them are just fine. Feel free to use whichever one you want to. Just be warned that keria is very casual, so in a job interview, I probably wouldn't say the word keria, but I digress. While we're here, I also want to talk a little bit about deconstructing these conjugations. This is another thing that people struggle with a lot. This is going to be a very, very heavy episode, if I'm being honest, with all of these tips I'm giving. So the full word that we saw was tsukamaeta keria. This is the full word, right? Okay, so here's the full word, right? Tsukamaeta keria. Now, how do I recognize all of the things that are going on here, right? So we see ta here. So could this be the ta form? Maybe, but you should never, ever, ever assume you know anything about a word based on the middle of the word, right? All of Japanese conjugation happens by changing the end, adding more, changing the end, adding more. So once you've done that in a sequence, it's easy to unconjugate a word back into its original meaning. Here, the last ending that we can currently see is what would normally be kereba, but is keria here, right? Where does keria come from? Keria is what the E sound on the end of a word that ends in E can turn into, meaning that we had to have done that at some point to get to where the word is now. So if I want to unconjugate it to figure out where the original word came from, I can just do the exact opposite. Instead of changing the E into keria, I change the keria into E. Now the word is tsukamae tai, right? Now what is the ending that we're looking at here? Well, we're probably looking at tai, since tai is another ending that we know. So this means to want something, right? Now, what do we know about a word conjugating into its tai form, aka wanting to do something? Well, we know that if it's group 1, it has to end in its E ending character. So nomi, sashi, tachi, so on and so forth. What character family is this a part of, right? It's an e character, not an e character. So we know, again, fundamentals are important here. We know that this cannot, under any circumstances, be group 1, because group 1 would never end like this. Is this a group 3 word? I don't know. Does it look like sudu or kudu to you guys? Probably not. So it's not group 3 for sure. Meaning that we know for a fact that this word is group 2. It's the only one left. And what do we do with group 2? We drop the ru and add tai. So doing that in reverse means we take away the tai and add ru. Now, this ending here is our base ending, right? It's the natural form of the word. So tsukamaeru is the original word. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. Now let's do that the normal way. Tsukamaeru, want to catch, would be tsukamaetai. If you want to catch, tsukamaeta keria. Oh my god, Japanese is so elegant. Okay, next bubble, moto. Very simple word. Moto means more. Really, there's no other explanation needed. Moto means more. Next word we have is yowaru. This is the word for to be weak. Okay, not much more explanation needed there either, okay? Yowaru means that you're weak or that you're being weak. So our next ending here is going to be the saseru ending. This is what we call make or let form. I know it's a little bit complicated to have it be both of these, but hear me out. They're a lot more similar than you think. Really speaking, it's the exact same concept. It's just the intention is different, and I'll explain that. So when you use the saseru ending on a verb, what you are basically implying is that somebody is doing something by your will. You are either letting it happen or you're making it happen. So, for example, in these two English sentences here, I let my son eat candy and I make my son eat vegetables. The exact same thing is happening in both of these sentences. The implication is that it is my choice for this to be happening, or it is by my will that this happens. My son is eating something in both of these cases because I either made my son do it or I let my son do it. I could honestly switch these two if I wanted to and say I make my son eat candy or I let my son eat vegetables. The difference there being that that's just a very uncommon thing to say. You normally don't have to let your kid eat vegetables and you normally don't force your kid to eat candy, right? That's all contextual. But in both of these sentences, we would use the exact same form, saseru, to show that I am having my son do both of these things. Okay, so showing this in Japanese, we have tabe saseru. Again, we'll get into exactly how all the conjugation for these groups work, but tabe saseru, just take my word for it. It's to make, eat, or to let eat, right? So, watashi ga tabe saseru. I either make somebody eat something or I let somebody eat something. Watashi ga musuko ni tabe saseru. I make my son eat something or I let my son eat something. Watashi ga musuko ni ame o tabe saseru. Now we've got a choice to make. Ame means candy. So am I letting my son eat candy or am I making my son eat candy? Oh my gosh, how am I ever going to figure out which one of those it would be in English? Let's be real, okay? Let's be completely honest. We know which one it is, right? We're letting our son eat candy. Most cases are going to be like this, where it's pretty clear from the actual sentence context whether you are making somebody do it or you're letting somebody do it. Is it something that they would want to do already? If it is, then you're letting them do it. Is it something that normally they would not want to do? Then you are making them do it. I mean, I really can't make it any simpler than that. I think people overcomplicate some things in Japanese. Like, because this can mean both make or let, you're going to tell yourself in your head that you're going to get it confused all the time. But don't create a problem for yourself that doesn't need to exist. If you come across a sentence where you're not sure which one it is, cross that bridge when you get to it. Ignore it for the time being, okay? It is either to make something or to let something. Okay, and then of course, for completion's sake, this one is going to be watashi ga musuko ni yasai o tabe saseru. So I make my son eat vegetables, or I let my son eat vegetables. Whoa, which one could it be? All right, let's bring the boys back in here. Get them out there. Let's go ahead and talk about how we actually make this new form. Boy, oh boy, am I going to be excited when we know so many endings that I don't have to keep typing out the words nomu, taberu, and suru. But here we go. The word nomu is group 1. Just like with rareru ending, we are going to turn this into its a member. So shift from mu to ma. And that is going to be our replacement for sa. So because this ma is doing what sa does, we don't need both. Ma seru. Nomaseru is going to be to make or let drink something. In Japanese, the word kusuri, medicine, is always used with nomu, even if it's like a pill or something that you don't normally quote unquote drink. So kusuri o nomaseru would be to make someone take their medicine, and then, you know, I don't know, soda o nomaseru would be to let them drink soda. Taberu, drop the ru, add saseru, tabe saseru, to make or let someone eat something. Again, we've gone over this so many times, I don't feel I need to go over it anymore. Now, what is Suru's weird thing? Does it become shisaseru? That would make sense, but actually, this one's going to be a little bit weirder than usual. Suru disappears completely. You can actually just say saseru by itself to say make or let someone do something. So gemu wo saseru would be to let someone play video games. Kaji o saseru would be to make someone do chores. It's such a weird concept, but you know what? Not going to complain at this point. It is the least of our worries. Okay, so this here isn't saseru, it's rasete. How did we get here? Well, if you take a look at this seru ending here, and you had to just make a guess, make an educated guess, which group is it in? It ends in an e character, and then ru. Probably 90% of the time, it's going to be group 2. That's right. So if I was going to turn this into its te form here, then I would drop the ru and add te. Oh my god, Japanese is magical. And as explained before, the te just lets us continue our sentence where it would normally have ended the sentence. So we are going to make more weak. And then we have the return of kara here. I'm not going to re-explain this since this is a concept we already know, but since it was used kind of differently the last time we talked about it, I'm going to talk about it again here. Remember that kara is like since or because. So its use here is basically to tell us that this has to happen first, and then the next thing can happen. So after you make more weak, so from making it more weak, you can do the next action, which we're going to talk about now. Boru is just the word for ball. We're going to do something with this ball because it is marked with the O particle. Another brand new word, nageru. As you can probably guess, nageru means to throw something. After that, you'll notice we've got another sentence ending ender here, monda. So we've gone over nda. What does monda mean? Monda is what I like to call, kind of a fun name, the tutorial ending. So the point of ending your sentence with monda is to basically explain or go in detail about something that you think the other person wants to know about. So in this case here, since we are explaining what we mean by that way of catching Pokemon will never work, and we are giving an explanation as to how you actually go about doing it, we end with monda. We feel like we are answering the other person's question. That is monda. That's what I like to call it, the tutorial ending, because you're basically always using it to explain how something is done or explain the answer to somebody's question. And on top of that, we've got another particle to go over. This is the ze ending. So there's something kind of special with this ending and some other endings that we will see later. So we haven't really hit the ne particle yet, but just know that it's normally the particle you use when you are saying something that you expect that the other person will agree with. And then the yo particle is kind of the opposite, where you're just asserting something that you're absolutely sure of, right? So ne is like the agreeance particle, yo is the assertive particle. These two particles here have counterparts that make them sound a little bit more rough. Ne is the same as ze, yo is the same as zo. Now I'm going to explain this for a third time. Ze and ne have no meaningful difference between them. It is just a speech pattern thing. Usually, if you feel like you're in charge, or if you feel like you are the kind of authority in a situation, you're going to speak with the slightly rougher ending. So ze is what we call the you know particle. And again, it's going to be the rougher version of this particle. Ne does the same thing, but we'll go into more detail about that when we see it. If you've ever seen the ne particle and you've wondered what the difference between ne and ze are, there really isn't one. It's just, you know, if you're somebody who speaks from a place of authority, or if you speak with a slightly rougher intonation, then ze is the one you can use instead of ne. This also tends to be a more manlier thing to say, if you're a battle-hardened warrior, like our boy Red Sama here, then ze is the one that you will tend towards. But most people end up using both. If you feel like you are speaking from a place of authority, ze is the one you use. If you are, you know, just saying something like, oh man, sure is hot today, huh? Then ne is normally the one you use. Just know that when you use ze, you're like making sure the other person understood what you just said and agrees with what you just said. Reach the end of another panel. Take a moment to collect yourself. Go over everything that you've learned and see if you can translate the panel for yourself. I'll be there with you in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, translation 1. If you want to catch a Pokemon, this is exactly, literally what it says. Make it more weak. We're using every single part that the sentence is giving us. We've got the make form here. We've got the weak form. We've got the more. And then we've got the and then for kara. Throw the ball. Boru wo nageru. And then the ending, there's not really like a good translation for monda, because again, that is an example of the Japanese using a word where we would use like emphasis in our words or emotion. So in English, we would probably say it's something like, you've got to weaken it and then throw the ball. And that's kind of the idea that he's getting across here. But there's not really like a word that would indicate that in English, whereas in Japanese, there is a word that would indicate that. So if you want to catch a Pokemon, again here, since he's speaking from a place of authority, I think even though he is speaking like a kid and he is speaking with like this sense of authority over these 6-year-olds here, I think it's more appropriate to have him like, you know, speak in the more like teachery way instead of saying wanna, saying want to. I think that gets his personality across a little bit more. But, you know, wanna is also fine here because, again, he is pretty arrogant. Wanna is an arrogant thing to say, but this is a possible way that you can translate this. Weaken is also a way that you can say yowaraseru because, you know, if you are making something weak, you are weakening it. Weaken is just like an English word that we have that already describes that so well. So using the word weaken here works. Weaken it first. The first here comes from kara because we are saying this action, then this action. So the first action is weakening it, and then the second action is throwing the ball. And I think this works here too. And then in the cleaned up version, I've taken mondaze out of it completely because I think both of those things get across from, you know, tonal implications rather than needing something in English that indicates it. So weaken it first and then throw the ball. I think that totally works fine. And then finally, we've got the entire English rewrite. Now, in this one here, I've taken quite a lot of liberties here because instead of having the if you want to catch Pokemon there at all, I think it flows a little bit better if you just go straight into the explanation. So you can't just throw balls at it. This also gives me a little bit of room to play with Red's personality because instead of being super literal with his explanation, he's taking this as an opportunity to kind of make fun fun of them for the way that they're currently trying to do it, right? He's not just explaining, he's also making it very clear that he's the authority and the way they're currently doing it is just completely wrong. You can't just throw balls at it. The Pokemon needs to be weakened first, understand? And then the understand here is like a take from the Mondaze. So again here, just taking this first little bubble out completely gives me a little bit of room to really flesh out Red's personality, so that's what I did here. Excellent work today, my little Kohai. We are completely done with our first ever manga page, and it's only going to get faster and easier from here. So if you've kept up with everything so far, give yourself one of these, and I will catch you in the next one. Don't forget to do the YouTube things. Bye for now.